On today's show, we're covering the NFL Week 6 NFL Week 6, college football Week 7, full slate of games, loaded slate of games. Stay tuned. Like and subscribe. Leave a 5-star rating and review on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts. Cue the intro. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Raw Prospect Podcast. My name is Amy Nixon. Today is October 15th, 2022. And joining me from Austin, Texas, the Stat King himself, Mr. Michael Lean. What's up?
What is up, everybody? Saturday, October 15th at 12:24 a.m. Central Time, and we are recording this. I think this is the first time we've done our picks podcast on the day of actual games. We are now on Saturday, and we are about 11 hours from kickoff of our college football Saturday. Game day is in Knoxville this week, as we have a huge SEC showdown as advertised in the title of this live stream. Bama travels to Tennessee. Bryce Young expected to be back for that game, but I think he is a game time decision. We have a loaded NFL slate as well, featuring Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, a rematch of last year's playoff game, and a huge NFC East battle between the Cowboys and the Eagles. We're going to get into all of that and more here on this podcast. As Emmy said in our intro, like, subscribe, tell your friends about our podcast. Whoever likes sports, especially football this time of year, tell them about it. We're getting better with our picks. We're just here to do it. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. Do you have anything you want to talk about before we jump into our picks? Anything we should recap from last week or talk about before we get into this?
Well, one thing I'll say is Amazon paid whatever they paid. It was a lot of money, whatever it was. They paid a lot of money for two of the worst football games I have ever seen in my life. That's it. That's all I want to say.
It's funny because I'm in a sports media class right now. It's business to sports media class, and we've talked a lot about Amazon that is paying $1 billion for the course of this season to stream the NFL Thursday night games in that package that they have going. In the past 2 or 3 weeks, we've seen some of the worst football on display on Thursday night football that we can see in the NFL. But the games are still getting the ratings. Football is going to get ratings, and that's just that. So it is interesting, and hopefully we get back to some good Thursday night games. I know the other primetime games have been pretty damn good, and we have some damn good primetime games this week. So let's just go ahead and jump right into our picks.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's start with college football. Since it's Saturday, it's college football day. Might as well. And we're starting off hot. We're starting off with a big game in the Big Ten between two of the biggest brands in the Big Ten. It's going to be Penn State at Michigan, playing at the Big House. Michigan favored -7. What are you thinking?
This is a huge game. It's an 11 a.m. kick. If you look at what Penn State has done this year, they traveled to Auburn. They beat Auburn, even though Auburn isn't all that great of a football team. It's still hard to go down there at Jordan-Hare and win, especially the way that they did in that dominating fashion. They won a game at at Purdue earlier this season where Sean Clifford had to manufacture a game-winning drive at the end of the game. Their defense is playing well. I believe they lead that conference, the Big Ten Conference, in turnover margin. So Sean Clifford's done a pretty good job of taking care of the football. And I think they also lead the Big Ten in sacks. So my keys just fell down off my key hanger, which is what that noise was. But yeah, this Penn State defense is playing well. I think the key is going to be for Michigan. We know Blake Corum at the running back position is huge. He's one of the better running backs in the country. And this Michigan run game, if it gets going, then the pass game thrives off of that. But I think against a tougher Penn State front that has some athletes up front, we need to see for Michigan to, I think, jump into that next tier with the elites of the elites, with Alabama and Ohio State. We're going to need to see their young quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, take that next step in terms of throwing this team to a victory, if that makes sense. The past couple weeks, it's been a relatively light schedule for Michigan, and they really haven't had to rely on the arm of J.J. McCarthy, who's a young quarterback, to go win games. We still yet to see that. So I'm interested to see if at points in times against a really tough Penn State defense, they're struggling for whatever reason to run the football or their offense is stalling out. Can J.J. McCarthy throw them to victory when they know he has to throw? Sean Clifford in his career, 0-5 against top 10 opponents. But this Penn State defense is really good. Michigan has had some relatively close calls the past couple weeks. They pulled away from, forget who they were playing last week, but they had a close call a couple weeks ago against Maryland. They've been able to pull away late in games. They're good up front. I do think they'll win the game just because of Blake Corum's ability. He's so hard to stop in the run game. And Sean Clifford has been shaky his last couple of times out. But I do think from a Michigan perspective, the key will be, what does J.J. McCarthy look like? Can he matriculate the ball downfield, convert on third down, and not turn the ball over? I think turnover margin is going to be a huge factor in this game. I'm going to pick Michigan to win, but I do think it's going to be a close game. I'm going to take Penn State to cover the 7-point spread. I think their defense is good enough.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's interesting that these two teams control their own destiny, and specifically for Penn State, I think they have if they can win this game, and obviously they'll still have the Big Ten championship, they'll still have Ohio State down the line, most likely. But if they can pull this game out, then they will have a real chance of making the college football playoff for the first time, and that's no small feat. But on the other hand, as you said, Michigan, in order for them to be held in that high regard, in the same light as Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, they've got to win games like this, and they need to win convincingly. Games at home, in a big setting, home crowd on your side. You got to build off that and be able to put the hammer down a little bit. But for me personally, I don't think this Michigan offense is quite there, quite explosive enough to really pull away from this Penn State team. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, defensive battle, and I think it might come down to field goal kicking. Whoever has the better kicker might end up winning this game. I'm going to pick Michigan to win. But I'm going to take Penn State to cover the spread, and I think it'll be less than a 3-point game. I think that's how close I think it'll be.
Yeah, I agree with you. Penn State's going to keep this game close. Their defense is playing really sound football. As I mentioned, they lead the Big Ten in turnover margin, which means that they're creating turnovers defensively, but they're also not turning the ball over. So, you're not going to they're not going to kick themselves in the foot, shoot themselves in the foot by giving Michigan short fields off turnovers. Sean Clifford, while he hasn't won one of these bigger games yet against the top 10 team, he still played well in some of them. Not all of those losses have been on him in particular, and he is a veteran in a college sense. So he's played in a lot of these games. So he's not going to be, I guess, rattled by the environment. So I do trust Penn State's ability to keep this game close, especially since Michigan's offense isn't necessarily the most explosive in the world, especially through the air. And Penn State, if we're looking ahead to next year's draft, they have one of the top projected cornerbacks, defensive backs to come out of next year in the draft, and Joey Porter Jr., who's really, really good. So I do like Penn State's defense. If they can stop Blake Corum, which no team has been able to do yet, they will have a real shot at winning this game. But if Blake Corum is able to be effective on the ground, it might be a little bit tougher. But with that, we'll move on to our next game, which I believe is the game of the week in the SEC. Number 3, Alabama, undefeated, with questions around Bryce Young's status, at number 6 in undefeated Tennessee, in a huge SEC East versus SEC West showdown. So what do you think?
Man, as of right now, I haven't heard anything on Bryce Young. It's not official yet that he's going to play or sit. I think it's just questionable at the moment. Um, but assuming he does play, um, even with him playing, this Alabama team been hasn't performed up to par on the road. To be fair, that I think that's fair to say at this point. Even going back to last year, and we saw that this year as well. Um, in that game against Texas, also was a key example. Um, I think this Alabama defense, for one, I think they're formidable up front, but I think big plays will be available if you're able to block up front. If that offensive line holds up and is able to hold up for 4 seconds to get those receivers downfield, big plays will be there. Um, and because of that, I think Tennessee can get this done. Um, Obviously, this is a big test, and this is a big, hurdle for this program. I think it might be a mental hurdle more than anything because I think Tennessee has shown that they clearly have the talent. I mean, they went into Death Valley, always a tough place to play, and I don't care how bad that team looks right now in LSU. I mean, they still have Brian Kelly. They're still a well coached team, and they're always a very talented team. And they went into Death Valley and boat raced the LSU Tigers. So that offense is rolling. That defense is they play fast. They fly to the football. I'm picking Tennessee to win this game.
Look, since Nick Saban got to Tuscaloosa in 2007, this has been a yearly game, and Tennessee has yet to get over the hump. Saban's 15 for 15, 15-0 against Tennessee. Alabama is winning those games by an average margin of 26 points per game. But in those 15 years, Tennessee hasn't had a quarterback like Hendon Hooker. They haven't had a coach that plays the style of a Josh Heupel, and that their defense is probably as good as it's ever been in that time period. And this Bama team, well, if they have Bryce Young, we all know, well, they may have some internal flaws. They're a flawed football team in that their secondary is prone to big plays, as you mentioned. You hit that spot on. And their offensive line, a younger offensive line for Saban, one of the younger offensive lines he's had in his time at Alabama, has struggled at periods of times. We saw Texas and what Gary Patterson was able to do with some of those stunts that was, getting pressure up the middle in Bryce Young's face, getting to Bryce Young, and their struggles on the road. There are some flaws here. This isn't a perfect Alabama football team. It's a really good football team, one of the better teams in the country with Bryce Young at quarterback, but it's still not the Alabama team you think of. It's not that dominant Alabama team, and they've been far from dominant, far from perfect on the road. If you look at what Tennessee likes to do, they match up, I think, really, really well with this particular version of this Alabama defense. Josh Heupel, who was hired 2 years ago, he came in when Tennessee was an utter disaster. And he has really turned this program around. Of course, getting a guy like Hendon Hooker helps, a guy of his talent. But with his style of play, the up-tempo style of football that they are playing, with the weapons that they have on the outside that are able to stretch the field vertically while also make plays after the catch in the short to intermediate pass game, going up tempo in those deep passes. I think when you're going super fast, you're going that up tempo, you're not going to give Alabama time to make substitutions and to keep their guys up front fresh. That's why this offense is so effective. And for this defense in Alabama to be the defense that, for them to reach their full potential, in my opinion, they have to have Will Anderson and Dallas Turner getting to the quarterback. They have to have that front seven get to the quarterback, because this secondary, the bottom line is they just haven't shown that they're capable of being a lockdown secondary like we've seen in Alabama teams past. Volunteers use just 21 seconds of clock per offensive snap. That's the fifth fastest rate from snap to snap in college football. When you look at what they do in terms of throwing the ball down the field, average pass travels 11 yards downfield. That's the 11th best in college football. They run a lot of RPOs. They go fast. They're able to run the ball. You look at the receivers that they have on the outside, paired with Hendon Hooker's huge arm. Cedric Tillman, one of the best in the business. The USC transfer, who was a huge recruit coming out and originally committed to Texas, and Brew McCoy. Jalen Hyatt and others. I mean, these are playmaking threats that can stretch the field. And against this Alabama secondary, it doesn't really bode well. Tennessee matches up really well. And you mentioned the offensive line. Their ability to protect Hendon Hooker is going to be key. Because if Dallas Turner and Will Anderson are able to get going, and they can wreck this game. We all know that. But this Tennessee offensive line so far this season, only allowing pressure on 16% of dropbacks, the second lowest rate in all of college football. This offensive line is for real, and this quarterback is for real. He's yet to turn the ball over, yet to throw an interception. He's playing smart football. I think, given what we saw at Texas earlier this season, where Texas was really able to do whatever they wanted when Quinn Ewers was in the game, and almost still won that game with injured Hudson Card at quarterback, and not 100% Hudson Card at quarterback. given what we've seen Alabama sometimes struggle with in that secondary so far this season. If Bryce Young does not play, I not only think Tennessee could win this game, I think they could run away with it. Like win by 2 touchdowns, possibly. And I know people are going to be like, what? Alabama doesn't lose like that on the road. This is different. If you haven't watched Tennessee yet, it's going to be very eye-opening for some people. If Bryce Young plays, though, I don't think they're going to have that ability to separate. But I do think they're going to be in this game, like down to the wire. And I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to pick Tennessee to cover, and I'm going to pick Tennessee to win. I think it's a popular pick amongst the media this week, and we're probably going to be wrong, but why not take a risk every once in a while? And I'm going to make Tennessee +9 my lock of the week.
Okay. All righty. Okay. I like that. Another college football lock of the week. Rare sight on this podcast, but we're going to move on. Okay. Third game. It's going to be Oklahoma State at TCU. TCU favored -4. I'll go ahead and start. Max Duggan. Let's talk about Max Duggan. I don't think he's getting the credit he deserves right now. I mean, the people that know their stuff, they're giving him the credit he deserves. But I think the average college football fan probably doesn't know who Max Duggan is. But he has been absolutely killing it this year. I mean, he's on the radar for the Heisman. And honestly, TCU controls their own destiny. They're undefeated right now. If they win out, he could be the Heisman. You could see him in New York, 100%. And here's the thing: Oklahoma State, their schedule has been pretty weak so far, and because of that, they've been under the radar. But let's not get it twisted either. I mean, they were they were a few yards away from being in the college football playoff last year for a reason. That defense is legit. Mike Gundy is probably, I mean, year to year it changes, but I'd say he's the most consistent coach in the Big 12, I guess. He's the longest tenured coach right now. That's for sure the case. But I just think he's extremely underrated as a coach. I think he's a fantastic coach, and he's done a great job at Oklahoma State for years on years on years. But for this game, I think it's going to be Max Duggan making the plays to be explosive offensively. And I don't know if Oklahoma State really has that next gear to really turn it on offensively. I don't really know if they can do that against a great team. But I mean, those questions will be answered, and I guess that's the beauty of the game. But for me making this prediction, I'm just going to have to go with the proven commodity in TCU and Max Duggan. I'm going to pick them to cover that -4 spread. And I'll say the final score will be like, I'll say like 34-27.
Okay. I don't necessarily think that, Max Duggan playing fantastic. He's been absolutely great so far. Sonny Dykes is probably one of the favorites right now for Coach of the Year in college football. There's another coach in the Big 12 in Lawrence, Kansas right now that can also make an argument for that, and Lance Leopold for the Jayhawks. And there are some other coaches around the country that are doing great jobs, but Sonny Dykes in particular, I believe it's his first year at TCU. So it's rare that you see new coaches come in and have this fast start, but when you have a smart veteran quarterback like Max Duggan, who, if you've been watching the Big 12 for the past couple of years, you've seen flashes of him in this TCU program. And now they really have the playmakers outside to go along with him. They have a legit fast. They're a fast football team. That's what I've really noticed. I'm not really an eye test guy, but when I watch TCU, I mean, everything's fast. From the receivers, the running back is explosive. Their defense rallies to the football. They're just fast and athletic all around. And I think they match up well against Oklahoma State. But I think we have to acknowledge that this Oklahoma State team and Spencer Sanders, they've been playing in these big games for a long time now. And there's one commonality between these two quarterbacks so far this season. You want to know what it is? Neither of them are turning the ball over all that much. I know Max Duggan is probably yet to throw an interception, or it's very low on both sides. Spencer Sanders as well, with his threat to also hurt you in the run game, that's going to be important to watch. But neither quarterback has been making those critical mistakes. The difference for me is not the quarterback position in this game, even though I think TCU probably has a little bit of an edge just because of Duggan's ability to throw downfield. But I don't necessarily think it's that big of an edge over Spencer Sanders. I think Spencer Sanders is somewhat not being enough credit for what he does for this Oklahoma State team. But I think where TCU has the advantage is defensively and going up against an Oklahoma State defense that I don't think is all that great, or definitely not as good as they were last year. I think there are some holes in this defense. You can attack them in certain parts, and I think Duggan will find ways with these playmakers to make one or two extra plays, and TCU will end up winning the game and covering the spread. But I won't be surprised if it goes the other way. I mean, the Big 12 this year has been fairly unpredictable so far. But this is a huge game with high stakes. But I'm giving TCU the edge because I think they have the better defense. I think there are some holes in this Oklahoma State defense that we didn't see last year. And I just think TCU will continue to roll. They'll keep up the momentum. And they'll win probably by about a touchdown. And it's going to be interesting because I don't know who TCU plays next week, but if you're Oklahoma State, when you think about where you're trying to get to, you're trying to get to the Big 12 championship. If you lose this game at TCU tomorrow, okay, you have a really talented and probably what's going to be a hot Texas football team coming in to Stillwater next week with a suspect defense, and you look at what that Texas offense has looked like when Quinn Ewers is at quarterback. Even though Quinn Ewers has yet to play a true road game, which is going to be worrisome, and we'll talk about that next week. You could lose 2 in a row here. There's a real possibility if you're not focused and you're looking ahead, and then your defense doesn't play well enough, you could lose 2 in a row. And if TCU and Texas have the tiebreakers over you, you're sort of in big trouble. But we're not going to look that far ahead. It's a huge game, though, in terms of the Big 12, and I'm super excited to watch it.
Yeah, huge game for all of college football. I mean, it's 2 undefeated teams.
Right.
Anyways, we're going to move on to our ACC matchup for this podcast. We're going to have one matchup from every single Power 5 conference. I think I forgot to mention that at the beginning. But this is our ACC matchup. We were originally going to do NC State versus Syracuse, but we ended up switching to this one because we felt like we were more comfortable. We knew these teams a little bit better. And that matchup is Clemson at Florida State. Clemson favored -5 playing in Tallahassee. What do you think?
Well, ever since the Wake Forest game, DJU, man, has been playing really good football, like the best football we've seen since he became the starter at Clemson. And that's been really important for this Clemson team. Their offense has looked a lot better, a lot more fluid. In the defense, ever since they sort of got a wake-up call in that game against Wake Forest, they're playing better as well. They look like the Clemson defense that we thought they were going to be over the past couple of weeks. So this Clemson football team has come together. And even though this is a road game at Florida State and Jordan Travis, what he can do, I mean, he's probably one of the more, in my opinion, since I saw him play a couple of years ago before he got hurt, one of the most improved players just in general in college football, in my opinion. Um, he's been able to run, ever since we saw him a couple of years back. But what he's done in improving through the air has been really good. I think their coach is doing a really great job, Mike Norvell. He could also be, if Florida State is able to sort of steady the ship here, they've been struggling over the past couple of weeks, and have a really good season, you could see him in some Coach of the Year conversations potentially. But I just think this Clemson team overall is playing really complimentary football right now, and the defense is going to find ways. I think this Florida State team is still prone. It's still a process. They're still prone to some mistakes, and I think Clemson will capitalize on those mistakes. Their defense is playing well, and DJU keep stacking these games on top of each other, and this Clemson team is going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, simple as this. I mean, Florida State's running back, uh, can't think of his name at the moment. Um, Florida State's running back, if he's not healthy for this game, I think he's questionable right now. Um, Treshaun Ward, that's what it was. If he's not healthy for this game, I don't know if Florida State can even muster much offense at all. Um, Jordan Travis is solid, but this Clemson defense, if you're not able to have a two-dimensional, attack, they can just, you know, pin their ears back and rush with no regard for stopping the run at all. And that you can't let that happen if you're Florida State. If you're Florida State, the plan has to be running the football. You have to be able to run the football and stay on schedule in terms of staying in third and twos, third and threes rather than third and long. If you're getting into those situations, it's going to be really hard to not only win this game, but it's going to be really hard to just keep away from those mistakes that you were talking about earlier. Because that Clemson defense, obviously Brent Venables left, but they still play that attacking style. They're going to send blitzes. They're going to dictate what the offense does rather than the offense dictate what they do to them, if that makes sense. So I think this Clemson defense is probably going to make a couple big plays, probably a couple turnovers, maybe a fumble or pick six, something like that. And I think Clemson will win big.
I agree with you. So you'll be clear, both taking Clemson -5. That brings us to our last college football game of the week as a Pac-12 battle between two ranked teams. USC going on the road to play Utah. USC -3.5. I guess I can start with this one. If you're USC, this is your toughest test. You had a tough road test. What was it, a couple weeks ago against Oregon State? That was a close call against a pretty good Oregon State team. You scraped that game out 17-14 in a hostile environment. You beat Arizona State pretty soundly, and then you were able to beat Washington State last week by pulling away in the second half. This Pac-12 schedule is a lot tougher than we originally thought it was going to be. Now, if you look at what USC has ahead of them, they have this game and then some games they should win, like Arizona, Cal, and then Colorado. A really bad Colorado team. 2 of those 3 games are at home, but I see no problems for USC in those games before you finish up at UCLA and then at home against Notre Dame. That should be an interesting finish for USC, who needs to run the table if they want a chance to get into the college football playoff, in my opinion. Unless there's a ton of chaos and it comes down to some 2-loss teams, I don't think a 1-loss Pac-12 team would get in over potentially a 1-loss Bama team or a 1-loss even like Michigan team. But that's a conversation for another day. I think, Joel Klatt said it on the Colin Cowherd, the Herd this week, and I think on his podcast. Utah is sort of, in a way, not so great a matchup for USC in that what they do well is they like to run the football. They're a power running football team. And Cam Rising sort of thrives off the running game at the quarterback position, still super talented at the quarterback position. USC is still – we know what Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams have done. The additions through the transfer portal of Jordan Addison, we know their offense is really good. We've seen that. But this rebuild on the defensive side of the football for USC is still going to take a couple more years to get where they really want to be, to where they can, I think, actually contend for national championships. I think they're giving up. I think Joel Klatt said like 4.5 yards on the ground still. So I think the key is being able to do your very best to slow down Utah's running game. And if they can do that, I see no problems for USC here. But since it is on the road, and there is that extra half point, I'm going to take USC to win. But I think Utah gets up for this game. I like what Kyle Whittingham has done with that program. I think they're going to play physical, and I want to see how USC responds to it. So I think they do have the edge. I might be wrong. They might end up pulling away and winning this game by more. But I'm going to take the home dog to cover the spread, make it close, give USC a bit of a scare, but I'm going to take USC to win.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence with this game. I think it all is going to depend on, the start for USC. I think if Utah, gets a stop at all in that first quarter and gets into the lead, then they can dictate the pace and get Caleb Williams to stay on the sideline with that running game. And that means trouble for USC. USC isn't, I've given their defense credit on this podcast, and it's not because they're an elite defense per se. It's because I appreciate what they are, and they're a team that if they have the lead, they're a team that if they're playing with the lead, they're going to be aggressive and they're going to make plays. They're a playmaking defense. They're an opportunistic defense. If you throw them the ball, they're going to make the play every single time. But I think that attacking style might go away if Utah just punches them in the mouth. And that's kind of what I'm afraid of here. And on top of that, it's on the road. And I think this Utah defense is going to be looking for a big bounce back game. I think this Utah team, UCLA is legit. Let's not act like Utah's lost to 2 terrible teams. I mean, those are 2 tough losses. They were competitive in both games. So I'm going to take Utah to win here. It's risky, and to be honest, I kind of want USC to win because I want there to be, a Pac-12 championship with 2 undefeated teams, and the only way for that to happen is if USC wins and gets to the UCLA game undefeated. But I like Utah here, and Joel Klatt said it best, and you mentioned it earlier. This matchup is not good for USC. It's going to be all about that first quarter start. If I'm Lincoln Riley, if I win the coin toss, I want the ball first. I want to set the tone.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I definitely see where you're coming from, and I would not be surprised. But I just think that Lincoln Riley is going to show why USC brought him there and some of the things that he's going to scheme up. I thought it was super interesting how Joel Klatt has talked about, they run a lot of the same plays just out of a bunch of different formations. So it gives the illusion of they're running a bunch of different intricate, plays, and it's super hard to stop. But what they're actually doing is they're running a lot of the same concepts. They're running like 6 or 7 concepts out of a bunch of different formations. And that's what's so hard to stop about this Lincoln Riley offense. And it's sort of the same thing that you see across college football with a lot of these uh, elite offensive coaches. Even Steve Sarkisian does some of the same stuff, and some other guys as well. Josh Heupel, who we talked about earlier. So, I do think just because of the quarterback edge and that coaching edge that Lincoln Riley has brought to USC, I see them winning this game. I think they're good enough to make a play or two defensively, but I just worry a lot about still up front defensively for USC. And if Utah gets this running game going, we don't know. That could spell trouble for USC. So I definitely see where you're coming from, but either way, I think we think it's going to be a relatively close game.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be close either way. Okay, on to the NFL. But before we talk about the NFL, just going to remind you, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Um, we're building towards hopefully 100 subscribers, then 500, then 1,000. We're going to work our way up. And we can't do that unless you hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment below also. Literally leave anything, any questions, comments, concerns. Even if you just want to hate, like y'all suck, say y'all suck in the comments. I don't care. It helps engagement. It helps us grow. And then another thing, check us out on Patreon. It's patreon.com/raw prospect pod. We do bonus content over there. We do like extra podcasts, and we just talk sports. We also just talk about anything from time to time. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check that out. But let's get into this NFL content. Let's not keep y'all waiting. First game, Ravens at Giants. Ravens favored -5.5 on the road in MetLife Stadium. What do you think?
Man, there are a lot of these type of matchups this week in the NFL before we get to the primetime slate with Bills, Chiefs, and Cowboys, Eagles, where we have a team that surprised through the first couple weeks or the first 5 weeks. And then we have a team that we thought is going to be contenders that is kind of going on the road. And to play one of these teams that's really surprised us so far. And that's exactly the case in this game. We have Lamar Jackson, who's played like an MVP candidate so far this year, with going on the road to play a Giants team that's played really well. They had a comeback win last week in London, against the Packers team that's pretty damn good, I think. And they're playing well. And Saquon Barkley is I think, playing his best football of his career. And what Daniel Jones, I think, is able to show you so far this season with the coaching job of Brian Dable is that he, I think, is using his legs more in a smart way, if that makes sense. He's being more aware, I think, just game aware in general. And I think it's helping the Giants offensively. Now they're going up against the Ravens team, that has actually played better on the road than they have at home so far this season. I think the Ravens have the edge at the quarterback position. You look at sort of the history and the trends that are going in the Ravens' direction. First of all, Lamar Jackson never lost to an NFC team, 12-0 against NFC teams. So that's a pretty large sample size since he became the starting quarterback for the Ravens in 2018. Now you think about what the Giants have had to endure the past couple weeks, going to London, now coming all the way back. I know it's a home game. I do think they're going to keep it close. The Ravens have been in a lot of close games so far this year that have come down to the wire. I still have concerns about their secondary, but it's looked better the past couple weeks. I think they will win this game, but I do think the Giants will cover. There have been a total of 7 games in NFL history, though, that in which an NFL team that's played in London has not had a bye following their London game. And those teams actually, surprisingly, have a winning record the next week. They're 4-3 following the following week after playing in London when they don't have a bye the next week. So just keep that in mind. I think the Giants will keep it close, but they'll take a close loss to the better quarterback in Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I think what Brian Dable has done so far this year with the Giants is nothing short of incredible. I mean, it just really shows that if a head coach looks at his talent and just says, what do we have? What can we do? And what can't we do? And just leans into what they do. Just doing that, you can win a lot of football games, but also just be competitive at the very least. Even if, say they lost a few of these close games that they've had throughout this year. Obviously, the record says a lot. Being 4-1 says a lot, but also the fact that they've been competitive is more than anyone would have expected for the Giants this year. Not just the fact that they're 4-1. This team, they look completely different. They past Giants teams would have folded being down 17-3 against the Aaron Rodgers led team, rolling in that first half, and then boom, they flipped the switch and just completely came back in that game, stormed back in that game. For this game in particular, though, I think the Giants. I mean, I can't question them at this point. I mean, their roster talent is. I mean, it's fine, I guess, but they're good at what they do. They have a great game plan every week. They know how to attack teams, and I'm gonna pick the Ravens to win, but the Giants to cover here. And I feel pretty good about the Giants covering as well. I think the Giants have found a formula to be able to move the ball. It kind of reminds me a little bit with their reliance on naked boots and getting Daniel Jones outside the pocket and giving him easy reads and letting him be mobile. It kind of reminds me of kind of the game plan Matt Nagy had his first year with Mitch Trubisky and with the Bears. Kind of reminds me of that a little bit. But yeah, this Giants team, I think they're going to be in a lot of close games. I think that's who they are at this point.
Yeah, I think we agree, but for different reasons. I think the Ravens will win, but I think it's smart from a betting perspective to pick the home underdog to cover this spread, and especially with a team like the Giants, who great coach. They've hit on some of their draft picks. Kayvon Thibodeau has made an impact defensively. Defense is playing well. They're going to be in this game. They've shown the ability to come back, win in multiple ways, which is something that we talk about. So I do think they're going to keep this rolling. Even if they don't get the win here, it's okay. They put themselves in a really good position going forward. What's our next game?
All right. Let's move on. Yeah. Next game, Bengals at Saints. Bengals favored -2.5 on the road in New Orleans in the Superdome. What do you think?
Um, Bengals off a tough loss last week. In Baltimore at 2-3 right now, a team that I thought was going to get off to actually a faster start than they have. Their offense hasn't looked all that great at times. Their offensive line has struggled at times, and that's really where I worry in this game going up against the Saints defense. That despite some of their offensive struggles, has played pretty good football, pretty solid football, and it's on the road going against a tough defense. Um, really, to me, if the if the Saints front can get to Joe Burrow, which we've seen some defenses have success of over the past couple weeks, this could be a a trouble spot for Cincinnati. But I think Cincinnati, with the weapons that they have, and Joe Burrow at the quarterback position, will find a way to win this game. Whether that's by a field goal, a touchdown, it's just a feeling that I have. Sometimes you just have to go based off feeling, and I think the Bengals will find a way to win. But it is going to be interesting. I mean, falling to 2-4 in this AFC, you look at the landscape right now, it's not going to be great. So it is a bigger game than I think a lot of people are giving it credit for from a Cincinnati perspective.
Yeah. This is must win for the Bengals. No question about it. In that division, in this AFC, in that landscape of the AFC, we knew this coming into the year. You got to win the games you're supposed to win, and this is one. Well, you look at the schedule before the season. You made me think, oh, this is kind of a tough game, but no, this is a must win. This is absolutely a must win. Um, but here's the thing. I'm really low on Zach Taylor right now. I think I'm close to being out on Zach Taylor. I know that sounds wild, considering this team just made it to a Super Bowl. They just took down Kansas City on the road, something that no other team has done ever. And I'm still, you know, being pessimistic about Zach Taylor, but the writing's on the wall at this point. This offense, um, the blueprint to stop them is out there. You go cover two, deep like safeties deep. Don't let anything past you. Double team Jamar Chase. That's it. Um, if you force them to work down the field methodically, they will make mistakes. It's inevitable. Whether it be a sack, whether it be a penalty, they will make mistakes. And I think the teams that have gone with that two safety deep look against the Bengals, Joe Burrow has shown to be a little bit impatient. He's kind of reverted back to a little bit to what it was in his rookie year, where um, he's forcing the ball into tight windows when he shouldn't be. And I don't know, man. I'm gonna pick. This is really tough, but I'm gonna pick the Saints to win the upset, win outright at home. Um, the fact that Marshawn Lattimore is out, I just saw that. before the podcast started. That's not great, but the fact is the blueprint is out there, and unless I see any type of you know adjustments from Zach Taylor, I'm just not buying it.
Fair enough. I like to err on the side of who I think is a better quarterback if I have any uncertainty whatsoever. But we'll have to see. And I have no problem with the Bengals losing. No problem at all. But with that, we'll move on to our next game before we get to the two bigger games. This is a game that you wanted to talk about, so I'm going to let you start with this one. And I think it's an interesting game as well. But you brought it up when we were talking about which games we wanted to talk about. And you wanted to talk about Zach Wilson in particular. So it's Jets at Packers. The Jets are 3-2 with 2 straight victories. Big wins right now for Robert Saleh in New York. But this line does not make any sense whatsoever to me. I don't know about you. Packers minus 7.5. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think I'll start with this. It's not exactly connected to the game, but I just want to put it out there. The Jets are what the blueprint should be for a rebuild. And it's one word. It's patience. That's it. Like Joe Douglas has been building this thing over and over and over. 3 years straight, 3 great drafts, 3 pretty good showings in free agency as well. And it took 3 years. It took 2 years under this new head coach, I believe, and it's finally starting to click. And I know it's tough to let guys go through growing pains in the NFL. It's kind of painful, but I think the Jets are here at this point. I'm not saying they're a guaranteed playoff team in this AFC or anything. That's not the case at all. All I'm saying is they're here and they're competitive, and that's a lot better than what we could ever say about the Jets before. Now, for this game, I think Zach Wilson is being overly hated a little bit. He's a young player. He makes mistakes, but he also makes a lot of high-level throws that only a handful of quarterbacks in this league can make. And he's been a lot better in structure this year. That's another big key. That was the big question going into this year is, can Zach Wilson make the layups? Can he run the offense in its structure? We know the off-platform craziness out of the pocket is going to be there for Zach Wilson. That's what he does. But can he just run the offense when he needs to? And the answer has been yes. Now, I think I'm going to pick this as my lock of the week. I'm going to take the Packers to win and the Jets to cover, but only because that's the safe pick. But if I was feeling risky, I would probably pick the Jets to win. This Packers team, they're in an identity crisis. For one, I think Joe Barry should have been left in London. I've said this before on this podcast. I don't think this style of defense works for this team, and I don't think this style of defense has been working at all throughout the NFL. If you look at all the teams that run a 2 deep cover 4 system, Broncos, Chargers, Packers, who else? Those are 3 notable ones. And what do they all 3 have in common? They're getting picked apart. Laying back and playing this cover 4 coverage, it's not working as well as it was a few years ago. Teams have figured it out. And if the Packers don't figure out that they have the corners to play man and blitz from time to time, then they're just going to continue to be, a 16th ranked defense rather than a top 5 ranked defense. They have the talent to be a top 5 ranked defense, and the fact that their defense has been this average is infuriating.
Yeah, it's weird. This is a Packers team I had some questions about before the season, but mainly from an offensive weaponry perspective and what this receiving course was going to look like. Now, when you think of the Packers, Matt LaFleur, since he's been with the Packers, they're 26-3 at Lambeau Field since Matt LaFleur took over as head coach. In those games, Rodgers has thrown for almost 8,000 yards, 65 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. He's been absolutely fantastic at Lambeau. And coming off a loss, Packers are actually 6-0 against the spread at home following a loss under Matt LaFleur. So there are some trends here that say Packers are a safe bet, both to win the game and to maybe cover the spread. For me, though, I look at this Packers offense and I think, where is Aaron Jones? Where are these running backs? Why aren't they using the run game more? This was supposed to be one of the better 1-2 punches in the NFL at the running back position. And to me, it feels like they've gone away from the running game way too much. And that's sort of hurt them in a way. Aaron Jones, I think, had a quote earlier this week about this. I have to find it. And if I find it, then I will say it. But, yeah, I think they're in sort of an identity crisis offensively. I think they need to run the football more. And if you look at what they struggled with last week, Aaron Rodgers was 0 for 6 in his attempts that traveled more than 20 yards downfield, 20 or more yards downfield. They're not largely successful throwing the football downfield. You look at what the Jets have. They've hit on a lot of their draft picks. Breece Hall had a really great game last week, 197 yards from scrimmage. Zach Wilson, as you said, is getting some unfair hate or criticism, I think, as he's played, decent enough football the past couple of weeks. And Sauce Gardner, I think, I like the way the Jets secondary matches up against the Packers offense and these receivers. So I do think, given what we've seen so far, unless the Packers show me something different offensively and their commitment to running the football and their ability to throw the football downfield, which not a whole lot of teams have been able to do against this Jets defense so far, I think the Jets are a safe bet to cover this spread. I don't think the Packers are explosive enough offensively to be able to get those cheap touchdowns and to win this game by more than 7.5 points. So I am going to take the Jets to cover. And I'm thinking about taking the Jets to win, but I'm not going to do it just because it's the safe bet to pick Aaron Rodgers at home.
Yeah, I'm thinking about changing this pick too, but I'm just going to stick with it because the Packers have to win this game. They can't afford to lose this game because the Vikings, they have to keep track with the Vikings, and they already lost once to the Vikings. So
Right.
I think they understand that and know that, and I think they'll do enough to win the game. But I don't think this team is running away from anybody. And I mean anybody in the league. That means the Texans, Broncos, whatever the case may be. They're not running away from any team.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, now we get to the fun part. A rematch as advertised in the title of this live stream. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, a rematch of possibly the greatest football game we've ever seen in last year's playoffs, or at least most entertaining game we've ever seen. Bills minus 2.5. So I'm going to let you start. What do you think?
And I'm so excited for this game. I just want to say that first and foremost. But if I got to pick a team, I think I'm going to stick with the Bills. Um, I just this team is different from years past in one key thing: pass rush, pass rush, pass rush, pass rush. Um, we saw this last year in the playoff game. Mahomes had all day to throw in the pocket all game long, and obviously Mahomes is going to get outside the pocket. That's what he does. He makes plays, but getting him uncomfortable when they're when the Chiefs are playing in structure, and obviously the Chiefs aren't going to be throwing the ball 50 yards downfield to Tyreek Hill anymore. That's not going to be the case. They don't have Tyreek Hill anymore. So making Mahomes uncomfortable in that quick passing game to the Kelseys of the world, Juju Smith-Schuster, they've been extremely efficient with that this year. And if Von Miller can get home, Ed Oliver, Gregory Rousseau, I think they will get home. I think Orlando Brown is set for a rough day. Um, Here's the thing with Orlando Brown. He's an okay left tackle, but let's just say there's a reason the Chiefs haven't paid him yet. He's a guy who is huge, but he's also not quick enough to deal with a speed rush. And guess who's arguably the best speed rusher ever? Von Miller on the other side. Uh, that spells trouble for the Chiefs. I'm picking the Bills to win. I'm picking the Bills to cover. Um, and it's not that I don't think it'll be close. I think it's just going to be. I think it's going to be a field goal. I just don't think it'll be a 1 or 2 point game. I think that's fair to say. So that's really the only reason I'm picking the Bills to cover. I still think it's going to be close. I still think it's going to be probably one of the best games of the year, if not the best game of the year. So, uh, yeah.
Yeah. Bills, I've said it. I think they're the best team in the league when they're at full strength, given what they have and some of the injuries they had to occur. Still, with an injury or two they've had occur to them, when they play their A game, I think they're the best team in the NFL. Um, a plus 91 point differential in 5 games, 4-1, a game that they could have won against Miami, where I think just some existential factors, I can't talk, uh, might have played into Miami's hands at that point. Uh, this is going to be probably the best game we see all year in terms of quarterback play at the very least. I think these guys are on another level right now. What Andy Reid has been doing with this offense, I mean, you see new things every week, it seems like, with what they're scheming up and this and that. But you mentioned it. Not only are the Bills getting pressure, and this pass rush is different than years past. That's clear to see. If you can't see that, I mean, I don't know what you're watching. But they're getting pressure without blitzing. They're actually, according to the Ringer at least, blitzing at the lowest rate in the National Football League. And they're still getting home and being an effective pass rush. And what has generally given Mahomes the most trouble in his career? When you're able to produce pressure with just 4 and disguise coverages in the back end or drop back in the back end with 7 to, play this Chiefs offense pretty much straight up. If they can get pressure, drop 7 into coverage, even though that's easier said than done, and the Chiefs are, been really good. They're averaging, I think, they're first in the NFL in EPA per drive, expected points added per drive. They're playing really well. I think this Bills defense. Now I don't know what the status of some of their guys in their secondary are right now. I know they've been without Tre'Davious White for an extended period of time, and Micah Hyde is out for the season. Jordan Poyer is a guy who's been playing pretty well for them, and Kyer Elam has really gotten tested the past couple of weeks. So he's an interesting guy to watch. But I just think Buffalo, with what they're able to do, the explosiveness in the pass game, the ability to just strike at any time, the cheap plays offensively. My only question of Buffalo is their commitment to the run game. That's like the only thing I think you can question about this Buffalo football team, if they're going to be able to run the ball effectively. And sometimes this offensive line struggles. And I do worry a little bit about that against a defensive line that has Chris Jones. But I just think the Bills, with Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis and all the weapons that they have, I think it's a different Bills team. I think they're the best team in the NFL. I'm going to take them to win and cover.
Okay, yeah, but before we move on, I just want to say one thing. I think the key to victory for the Chiefs side of things is I think they got to get their run game involved. Um, if you keep this Bills defense honest, that's going to really help your offensive line, not only because they're able to, get out and, block and move forward rather than kick stepping back the whole game, but also it keeps the Bills' defensive line honest, and that will kind of neutralize some of the things that the Bills want to do as a pass rush as well. And we know Mahomes likes getting the ball out quick, particularly to Travis Kelsey and everything like that, and that kind of works like a de facto run game in a way. But I really do think um, if the Chiefs want to win this game, they got to run the football and keep Josh Allen off the field.
Yep. Okay. We will move to our last game of the week. And it's your team, Dallas Cowboys. A big NFC East showdown. They're starting to call it the NFC Beast with the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Giants all off to really hot starts. It's gone from the NFC Least to the NFC Beast all of a sudden. But yeah, the Eagles and the Cowboys, huge game in the NFC East. You have to start with this
Yeah,
one.
if you told me, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago that a division quarterbacked by Cooper Rush, Jalen Hurts, Daniel Jones, and Carson Wentz would be one of the best divisions in football, I would be like, uh, what?
Yeah.
But here we are. Here we are. Um, anyways, about this game, I'm super excited for this game as a Cowboys fan because we really get to see what this defense will be able to do against an elite offensive line. We haven't seen this yet this year. If you look at who the Cowboys have played, uh, the only, I guess, okay-ish offensive line we've played was the Bucks, and that was Week 1. And Dak got hurt, and that game didn't really go as planned. And the defense didn't play bad that game either. So I'm really interested to see what this Cowboys defense can do. I think the Cowboys defense is kind of entering 2015 Broncos, 2017 Jaguars territory of defense, which is like, you know, no matter what team you're playing, the defense is always going to make a play to keep the team in keep the team in games and almost uh win the game on their own, despite what the offense does. The Cowboys are kind of entering that territory if they do it again this week, but that's yet to be seen. On the Eagles side of things, I've seen a lot of talk on Twitter about, oh, the Eagles are frauds. Um, they haven't beaten anybody yet. That's a bunch of baloney. Um, I I don't understand that at all. Um, they've beaten the teams in front of them, but they've also clobbered the teams in front of them. Like, are you kidding me? Um, this team does so many things on an elite level. Not only do they have great weapons offensively, they have an elite offensive line. Um, you know, the question going into the year was quarterback, and Jalen Hurts has answered every question over and over and over again. He hasn't been perfect, sure, but he's gotten the job done. The one question I have with that Eagles offense is um, they haven't gotten into a situation where the defense forces them to pass more than they want to. They've always been able to dictate, you know, they've always had a counter to what the defense does. Like, oh, you're going to rush Jalen Hurts? We've got a pitch over here to Miles Sanders. Stuff like that. They always have a counter. But if, if the Cowboys take away their right hand, which is running the football, and force the Eagles into third and long situations, that could spell trouble. That's my only question about that offense. And then defensively, you can make the argument they're even better defensively than they are offensively. I think this defense is incredibly underrated. Their pass rush is great, and their secondary is arguably one of the best in football. Darius Slay and James Bradbury, I think, is the best corner duo in the NFL right now. Um, and I don't like at this very moment, I don't think it's close. There's not a team performing at this high a level as the Eagles duo. Um, as for making a pick for this game, though, I'm going to pick the Cowboys to win. It Call me a homer if you want to. All right, I get it. I'm a Cowboys fan. Yada yada yada. But I believe in this defense, and that's really all there is to it. I think this defense has shown, and I ultimately do think that what I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast will come into fruition, where this defense is 2015 Broncos, 2017 Jaguars level, where they just make a play every single week. Um, this defense, if I were to describe them, they may not be the most complete defense in every position group in the league, but one thing I will say is they are the most fear mongering defense in the NFL, if that makes sense. They have two of the best playmakers in football on the defensive side of the ball in Michael Parsons and Trayvon Diggs. Two guys that will just wreck a game, cause chaos. More so with Micah, but Trayvon does his thing too with the interceptions and causing turnovers. I'm biting the cheese. Okay, I picked this team to go 8-9, but I've bought in. Like I'm in full arrogant Cowboys fan mode. I might be humbled this week, but I'm rolling with my Cowboys.
Well, that's totally fair. It's sort of funny. We both picked our teams to go like 8-9, and they're going in two opposite directions right now. But that is what it is at this point. I'm not going to go on my Steelers tangent, but we'll save that for another day. Well, I think it's going to be so hard for me to make a pick. But yes, it is sort of a physics situation here where we have, and I'm not a physics expert per se by any means, but we have an unstoppable force in this Eagles offense that's been really good so far. you pointed out basically everything you need to know. Jalen Hurts playing at a high level. The addition of A.J. Brown with Devontae Smith and all the other receivers that they have and weapons, really, really good. One of the better lines in the league. Their defense is playing well. A well-rounded football team. Like, you can't be 5-0 and not be playing complimentary football. Averaging 27 points per game. But on the other side, you have a Cowboys team that, as you said, they're the immovable object as of right now. You have a Cowboys team that's yet to allow a team reach 20 points, which is unheard of in my opinion. They're surrendering just 14.4 points per game, ranks third in the league, which is surprising that it only ranks third in the league. I don't know who's better right now, but they are, I think you put it perfectly, they put fear into the other team. What they're able to do with the pass rush, and it's not just like Micah Parsons. It's not just DeMarcus Lawrence. It's the others too that are getting in on the party. Dan Quinn done a great job. I even think we got to give a lot of credit to Mike McCarthy and how he's been able to manage this team through this process of having Cooper Rush at the quarterback position. Cooper Rush not making a whole lot of mistakes, if at all, and he's not hurting this Cowboys team, which is allowing them to win these games. And we've talked while we watched last week's Cowboys game about the running game and how you think that the best running back, not only on this team, but, one of the more underrated running backs in the league in general is Tony Pollard. And look, I think if this is a lower scoring game, which I think it's going to be, I'm going to give the Cowboys the edge. I'm definitely picking them to cover. But these division games, these teams know each other too well for it not to be close in my eyes.
Yeah, this line is ridiculous. I don't understand that line at all.
I'm going to go Cowboys to win and cover. Cooper Rush is yet to lose. I mean, it is what it is. I don't know.
Jimmy Garoppolo vibes. That's kind of what I get from him.
Yeah.
But yeah, one other thing I'll say about the Cowboys. When you were mentioning Dan Quinn, one thing people aren't mentioning, I saw this. I think I got to give credit to whoever said this. I think it was the Chris Sims podcast, I believe. He said the Cowboys defense have the highest stunt usage percentage in the NFL at 41%. Second most in the league is at 29. So they use every every advantage they can um, with stunting and getting matchups for these defensive linemen. So I just think Dan Quinn. How can you even question if he's a head coaching candidate at this point? I mean, of course he is. It's just whether he'd want to take a job.
Yeah, we have our first comment, live chat from DC4L from KY, which I guess is, I don't know,
Kentucky?
Kentucky. If I had to guess, I don't know. He says Cowboys will win 31-24. So thank you for that. And I definitely could see that as a result. Thank you for that comment. Shout out to you. But yeah, I think that's all we have for today.
Yeah, that's gonna be it, guys. This podcast is right around our usual hour and 30 minutes, hour and 20 minutes. But yeah, that's gonna be it. We're gonna be back. I think this weekend for NBA. NBA starts in 3 days now. I think this starts either Monday or
Tuesday.
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 So keep an eye out for that. We're going to be covering the Western Conference, giving our predictions on that side of things as well. So stay tuned. Also, we're going to get back to posting on our Patreon soon. So if you're interested in supporting over there, definitely go check that out. Once again, that's Raw Prospect Podcast. Wait, no. I screwed that up. Patreon.com/Raw Prospect Podcast. Sorry. Um, anyways, I'm gonna let Michael sign us off here. We're finishing this up at close to 2 a.m. right now. Like we're literal lunatics. Honestly, the fact that we've had anyone in the chat at this point tonight is crazy to me. But shout out to y'all, and I'm gonna let Michael sign us off.
Look, it's one of the bigger college football Saturdays we've seen in a long time. It's one of the bigger NFL weekends, I think, of the season because of some of the matchups that we just talked about. We're sort of in that time of year where it's full go. Podcasts, sports, everything with NFL, college football, NBA starting. These previews take a lot to put together for y'all. You know, we're right smack dab in the middle of the baseball playoffs right now. And we'll have more content regarding the baseball playoffs coming for you guys soon. I think once the division series wrap up, we'll probably be doing a recap and preview of the ALCS and NLCS as we progress towards best of 7 series. Those will be interesting. The World Cup is in a month. College basketball is coming up. Everything is at full force right now. We're going full speed ahead, but we're committed and we're going to look to continue to grow the podcast. So, as we say over and over and over again, we can't stress it enough. We greatly appreciate y'all's support. Like, subscribe, check out our Patreon channel. We haven't posted on there in a little bit now, but there will be some content there, I'm sure, in the near future. And yeah, just enjoy it. Enjoy your football Saturday and Sunday for that matter. And just like the balls Bryce Harper hit from the city of Philadelphia.
By that, what do you mean by that?
From the city of
Rephrase that a
Philadelphia.
little bit. Rephrase that.
Just
Back
like
up.
the dingers that Bryce Harper hit in tonight's playoff game against the Atlanta Braves. And just like, in my opinion, the Braves' chances of winning that series now, we are gone.
See ya, Atlanta.
Peace.